I mean it. And I won't get into it. Maybe we'll bring it up as a topic. But I had an incident that just told me, like, I'm a real alcoholic. Not really. I'm a real alcoholic. Like, this is. I'm not a past tense alcoholic. I'm a present day alcoholic. And it was very obvious to me last night. And I was like, I'm glad I know that. And this is my point. I'm glad I know that. That I don't think, I'm better. That's all done. No, it's still me, which means I still need to put in the work in order to keep myself safe. And that was driven home. I really felt that way last night. I'm like, and it's always good to be able to come here and have this podcast and go to my meetings and do all the other things I do in order to keep that alcoholic mind at bay.
Welcome to the Sober Friends podcast, where, hey, if you're on the sober journey, you're in the right place, whether you're sober curious or you're a grizzled old-timer. My name is Matt J., and on the other side of the monitor is Steve. What's up, Steve?
Hey, Matt.
I want to talk a little bit tonight about learning from our mistakes. And I'm going to set this up because I have a bit of a eureka moment from a meeting that I went to. And I hear this type of thought process a lot. And it goes into where we need to give ourselves a break sometimes. This does not mean that all the stuff we did in our drinking, we don't have to atone for. We have a process for that. I'm talking afterwards. So somebody mentioned, I really wish I learned how to use the book the way I know how to use it now when I first got sober. And I just don't feel comfortable all the time doing the highlighting. So I don't have a lot of highlighting in here. And my sponsor wrote some stuff in the margins and I was like, and I just haven't gone down that route. And it made me raise my hand immediately, try to be careful not to crosstalk, but to talk about how, hey, we got to give ourselves a little bit of a break here because I hear this too much. But the reason that you didn't use the book properly when you first got sober is you didn't know how to yet. This is anything in life. Think about, gosh, I wish I had learned this topic when I was in high school immediately. Okay, but you didn't. You needed to learn. And sometimes you need to fail. You need to not do well. You need to go back and learn it. And I think there's also this idea that we have to speed through to get somewhere. That's not the case. There's a journey. We will never reach our destination. So maybe it takes people 2, 5, 10 years. It's going to take the time you need to absorb and do it, quote, right, as it takes for you to be ready. Kind of curious your thoughts on this one.
When you're talking about it, I'm thinking, how did I feel when I came in? First of all, I always like to say that, it's that old saying, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
I can remember saying that at work several times. We would have these new systems and stuff, and my boss would say, if you have any questions, just ask. Mm-hmm. And I used to say, I don't know what the questions are. And that's a little bit like when I came in, right? I mean, I didn't know what the questions were. I didn't know what I was there for, right? I mean,
Correct.
Honestly, I didn't know what I was there for. Talked about it many times here, is that when I first came in 95, and even a little bit when I came back in 2010, I came there because I drank too much. Mm-hmm. And it took me a while to figure out that the problems were much more than that. So, yeah, I didn't do a lot of things right. And I've said it before, and I say it a lot to people who I've sponsored, is that one blessing that I've had since I came back this time, because it wasn't easy, it took me a while to get going, is that I didn't pick up a drink as I allowed myself a chance to figure some stuff out. And there were some really rough times, but I never picked up a drink. And that allowed me to make mistakes, to not do things the right way, to maybe not use the big book the right way. I didn't do my first Joe and Charlie. The first thing I thought about, too, was I wonder how many Joe and Charlies he's done, which is, we both know his sponsor. Mm-hmm. and I'm assuming he did a bunch with his sponsor, who did them every year for ages.
Yes.
And I don't know. You go to Joe and Charlie. That's where probably 90% of my highlighting came from, because there's a lot more time, I think, at Joe and Charlie to highlight and make those notes in the margins and things of that nature. So it's interesting. And again, everybody does things differently. The highlighting's highlighting, because the truth is I have so much highlighted in certain areas of the book, like the highlights don't mean as much to me anymore.
Yes.
Right? Is that at the time I highlighted it because something jumped out about that passage. And you can tell the different times, because I tried to make a point that I use different colors at different times. Mm-hmm. So therefore, you look at my book and there's all different colors. That's because it was probably a different year of a Joe and Charlie, and I was using a different color. And so, yeah, I mean, you got to give yourself a break that, and the truth is, you have another chance. You have a chance to redo this whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. This guy had the chance to, his sponsor has moved away. Whether he's going to get another local sponsor, I don't know. I think, who knows? But you have another chance to go through the steps again, to do it again, to start it all over again, and to use the big book the way you want to use it now, today, now that you have X amount of years of sobriety. Now that now that you know how you might want to use it better to further your sobriety. So, yeah, I think it's something we all have to learn and figure out, and figure out what we need from this program.
There's nobody who has perfect sobriety, even the grizzled old timers that we all know and love. Nobody has perfect sobriety. So when I talk about this character, he's sober and has been sober for quite a while. I've known him the whole time he's been sober, and I have seen how he has grown as a person and overcome family challenges, family successes. I think through things watching this person. And he's been sober for a number of years, and he's lived pretty successfully. To me, that's success. He also involves himself in the program. The sponsor that he picked is, in terms of quality of sobriety, and somebody who really knows the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know who else you could find better.
I agree.
And not one of these big book thumpers that is, gruff and rah, rah, rah. He's not one of those people. He's a pretty reasonable person.
Yeah.
So if you're going to put the work in with that type of sponsor, it's going to be tough not to learn something. Going in and getting sober in itself is really hard. And if we could have done it ourselves, we would have. The big book, very hard to understand. Takes time. And even with the best people around you who can break this down, it's still tough. A lot of moving parts. We want this done quickly. Even before smartphone culture, now it's smartphone culture. My goodness, I should be able to plug everything into ChatGPT, have something spit out, and give me step by step on how to do that instantly. And that's not the way it works. So if you're complaining, I wish I learned this earlier, could have saved myself a lot of pain. Sure, but you didn't. You learned it when you were ready to absorb it, and it just takes time. I'm not saying forgive yourself if you've done, harm, but don't beat yourself up if you were trying and it just didn't click. That's most of us.
Yeah. One of the things I'm wondering if I think I probably do this myself, I have a pretty good life today. Don't have a lot to complain about, which doesn't mean I don't complain about a lot.
Right.
There's a difference, but I wonder if we get to a certain point and then we start to nitpick our sobriety, right? We start to look for flaws in it. And maybe that's not such a bad thing, We start to think about what am I not doing well and what do I need to do more of and all of these things. So we start to nitpick some of this stuff and like, ooh, I'm sitting next to, Steve here and he's got his whole book highlighted. And I've had those comments before, oh, you don't have much highlighted or you have a lot highlighted, because I do on certain areas of my book, not all areas, certain areas. And again, we start looking at that, and we start maybe maybe we're comparing again, and if you don't need to highlight or whatever it is, then don't worry about it. But I think it's bigger than just highlighting some things in the book or using the book. I do think it's about us trying to figure out, is our program working for us today? And I would question this person if I had a one-on-one conversation with them, like, maybe that's the question you're asking yourself, right? Maybe that's the question. Mm-hmm. Is my program up to par with what I want it to be? Maybe that's what you're searching for. And you sort of looked at this big book issue, as a way to sort of start that conversation with yourself. I know I have those conversations. It's why I've been feeling like I'm drawn to some service work. So I've started to, and that's been going on. That has not been an overnight thing. That has been nipping at my heels for months and months and months now. And that sooner or later, I just have to decide, when that's happening to me personally, what am I going to do about it? And for me, it was time for me to step up and do some more, do the next step of service work. So I think if you're working a program that you're going to try to apply to all aspects of your life, then I think you always need to question, is it working for you? Because times change, right? What I needed 5 years ago is different than what I need today.
Yes.
Right? So I hope my program will evolve to something that'll help me today with today's challenges.
So here's the other thing. This guy who, in a sense, indirectly is flogging himself for not doing enough. We didn't have a chair Monday night, and he volunteered to do it last minute. Mm-hmm. So flogging himself, and he's already doing more than what would be expected beyond showing up. Showing up last minute, I'll run the meeting. Mm-hmm. That's a big deal. That is a good thing you're doing. Does that mean because you're chairing that you have perfect sobriety or sometimes even good sobriety? It doesn't. But it's something. It's something that you're doing. And I mention this because I have been guilty of this. This is the social media effect. In Alcoholics Anonymous, there is the whole, I'm gonna compare my insides with your outsides. And it's very easy to do this, especially with some of the old timers or some people that you see. They go to a meeting every day. Maybe they go to a meeting twice a day. They can quote, they don't even need to read a page from the book. If you want them to read it, they know it. They sponsor people. But that doesn't always mean everything is great with them. And I think this is really exaggerated in Alcoholics Anonymous because we had a drinking problem. There is that underlying foundation that when you go to a service meeting or AA and you see people behaving poorly or aggressively or whatever that looks like, it's exaggerated because these people were all alcoholics. You're not going into a business meeting at work. These are people who had something going on. And some people are more vocal because they had to hold really tight to the program and do it perfectly to stay sober.
Right.
But that may not be my experience. I don't have to do what you did. And some people will try and beat you over the head. I look at as positive intent because it was so do or die with them. They feel it's do or die with me, and it's not. We're on a different spectrum. Mm-hmm. And I have felt those things. I'm not going to as many meetings as so-and-so. Okay, what is my home situation? Different. Am I a miserable prick? No, I'm not. Okay. Then that tells me I'm doing it right.
Yeah, we got to figure out what's right for each one of us. And And I don't. There was a time where I sort of had this feeling too that you needed to do so many meetings, and sometimes that's true. And I'll tell you a story of a sponsor that I had years ago. He came to me and he was really just going through a really tough time. Wasn't drinking, has not had a drink since then, I don't believe, although he's not doing meetings or whatever. But I do remember him coming in really having a hard time. And I said to him, I'm like, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go home. I said, do you still use a paper, wall calendar? And I said, I want you to go home and I want you to put an X on each day that you went to a meeting in the last month. And then count them up and see if you really think that was enough. And I knew the answer, right? The answer was he probably had gone to maybe 1 or 2 or 3 meetings in the last month. And my point was, at that point in his sobriety, it wasn't enough. But we all have to find out what that is for us. And it is different for everybody. I do think you hit on something there where we live in a different world of instant satisfaction now.
Absolutely.
Right? And not only social media, but we get on our phone and then a package shows up at our door with something that we
sometimes same day.
Sometimes the same day. Matter of fact, my stepson was up here for the Thanksgiving holiday, and he wanted to play this game. They had gone away with some friends, and they wanted to play a game, Rubik Cube. And he's like, hey, do you guys have it? I'm like, no, I don't think so. So he ordered the next day. He shows up at our doorstep. Same day, showed up right? Same day, showed up so that they could play it for the holiday. And I don't typically get same-day shipments. I don't ever need anything that quickly. But my point is, we are used to that now. They don't call it on-demand TV for nothing. Right? Yeah. On-demand. I want to watch this movie now. So I do think, as much as maybe we don't think it does, it builds itself into our minds, our mindset, that we need things to happen faster than they're happening. And I'm certainly guilty of that. Although I do work hard to sort of watch that tendency in me. But I do think that's part of it. And I do think that we all need to take a deep breath. I think reviewing where we're at in our program or our sobriety, I won't even say our program, because maybe it's people out there who don't have a program listen to us. But certainly on their journey, on your sobriety, if your sobriety is not where you want it to be, then there's something to look at.
Right.
Right? That's what it is. There's something to look at. And like I said, there is no question that what I need today is different than what I needed 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And, which to me, still, it's still interesting to me, like how much of a mind of an alcoholic that I have. And, I constantly look at that. And when I talk and I share stories, I start to think to myself, is that really true? Or am I playing it up? Am I telling a story that's not true? Or am I trying to embellish something? But every once in a while, I'll sit back and I go, something? I'm a real alcoholic. And one thing I started to share is that I love to drink. And I say it not in a past tense, but in a current tense. Because I've always said that if you gave me a drink today, then I would love to have that drink. I would, physically, I would take it and go, ooh, yeah, I remember what that feels like. I would do it. Like today, I know I can't do that. And today I know the destruction of that drink. But I think I would still get that same first feeling. And that, to me, that's worrisome. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's why I do all my program stuff. And I'm going to tell you something right now. My program stuff is just, balls to the wall right now. I am just sort of doing a whole bunch of stuff, and it'll settle down a little bit, but I've got some commitments going on that I've made, and they're sort of all snowballing, and it's like, boom, right now, like the last couple of weeks, it's like, it's been busy. And that's a good thing for me, because it sets me up for some, some good sobriety, some good stuff in the future, again, which is what I feel like I need.
I would hope that I'm not trying to grab the same thing out of sobriety that I did in 2014.
Yeah.
Because I should have grown from that point. I'll give you an example. I go to Monday night, we read a chapter of the big book every single week. And this can get boring for me because I've read this stuff, especially going to Joe and Charlie's. I don't know if I've got it memorized, but I've read it. And there's some chapters that I like more than others. And there are some people who are like, oh, this is my favorite part of the book. And I'm like, really? Because I hate this part of the book.
Right. Yeah.
This is not what I look forward to. And I have to get my mind around, it's not about learning anything more. It's about listening for the new person. I have to, if I really want to get something out of sobriety, now I'm at a place of where can I serve somebody else? What can I listen to in the book and maybe craft it in a share around I can give this something so that you can learn it. Mm-hmm. Or have a conversation where I think it led to people being very honest, because I also talked about God, and because the other person said he's got a great relationship with his higher power, and I raised my hand and I'm like, this is great. I'm envious because I don't have it the same way. I'm more agnostic. And I think it's fantastic that you can have this and I can have mine, and both are right. It's not critical to say, I believe one way, so you must be wrong. It's, I believe this way, and I see your point. And that's okay too. And then have an opportunity to just say, look, if you're struggling with, I don't understand all this stuff, you're okay. It's okay not to understand this. You're never going to have it 100% nailed. We don't get to a destination. I've gone through this, and there'll be time I'm like, well, that makes sense now. And you kind of learn, you go through, trying to remember what we did. We did like 10 and 11. And I look at, I'm trying to remember what I said about 10 and 11 because I had something there too. Oh, yeah. I talked about the temperature. And this was something that, again, I could say, I wish I knew this earlier. I had somebody who just coincidentally was also in the program who worked for me. This person worked on the phones, and the customers would get her worked up, and the temperature gauge would go from green to yellow to red. Now, we could listen to a call where she got into the red, and she made all the same mistakes she always did. And I could coach her to, here's what you need to do in this situation. But the real coaching is, you can't get into the red. I can coach you on things, but once you get into the red on the temperature thermometer, there's nothing I can do for you. Right. And that's also the way it is for me. So my coaching for you is, when you start to feel you're losing control because somebody's pushing you, what is the thing that's going to keep you from reacting? You'll stay in the green there. Then I don't have to coach you to, if you do this, then you've made this mistake. Well, I don't have to coach you to that because you're never going to get there.
Right.
And that's the real thing of how do you, I wish I knew. No, sometimes it's how do you keep calm? And I looked at steps 10 and 11 as, the beauty of those steps are they keep you in the green. They are, I don't want to say maintenance step because the old timers will get angry, but they're a place that, okay, you've done all this other work. Now you have some experience in the steps. Now you have something that when new things come up, you immediately have you have tools to help manage. And this is one when I'm in step 10 and 11 and I've got to make an immediate amends, or I'm going through my inventory at night. And it's like, shit, why didn't I should know better than this. I lost control of it. I learned this from doing amends. I learned this from my 5th step. And even then it's like, no, you got to keep refining it. And think about everything as not shit, I should have known better. It's more of, all right, this is an opportunity to learn more about myself and learn a new tool that when this comes up again, I know how to adjust to not make it as big of a deal.
Yeah, a lot said there, Matt. One of the things that I have figured out that I need to do as I need to adjust, like I said, I need to adjust on the go in my program. And for me, this is one of the advantages that I see of having the group of AA as my higher power, is that I can reach out to my higher power, which is another person basically in the program, and I can get some guidance. And the other thing I love about it, and you don't need to have AA as a higher power. Well, first of all, I guess what I would say is that that's the important thing of having a higher power, right? And I know this person too, and they have they seem to have a very good contact with their higher power, and they lean on their higher power. So, that's one of the first places you want to go, is do your prayer and meditation and look for help there. So for me, that's going to the group or to an individual. And I've said it many times, it sounds like a broken record, but man, I've surrounded myself with some really quality people in the program. Mm-hmm. And there's a group of them that I could call up and pick their brains. And some are better than others on different topics. And one of the things, right, and I'll say something I don't talk about much here, but if I'm having trouble in the sex world, right, I know exactly who I'm going to pick up the phone and talk to, right? Like I know exactly who I can have that conversation with, who thinks like I do, who's shared about it like I have, and I can have a conversation with that person, right? To me, that's really, really helpful, If I'm, if there's just so many people, our buddy Timmy or Edson, Todd, all these guys that I know that I can pick up the phone and call these guys and get whatever guidance I need at that moment. And that's what allows me to sort of tweak my program. That's what allows me to change either on the fly, but also to change my complete direction. One of the things I was just talking to somebody about, we were talking about doing steps, and I said, I'm 15 years in the program. I've done the steps twice. Probably did them like 5 or 6 years in after I did them the first time. So I'm probably sort of set up to do them again, right? That sort of be my pattern.
Yep.
Like I'm ready to do them again, and I'm ready to go through them again, and I like to do that with different people. So if I did it a third time since this time back, I'd probably pick somebody different to go through them with, just to have a different experience, and that to me is how I manage these things, how I deal with these things. So again, that's what works for me. That's how I keep trying to work my program. And I'll tell you, I went out to dinner last night and had with my wife and had an incident. I mean it, and I won't get into it. Maybe we'll bring it up as a topic. But I had an incident that just told me, like, I'm a real alcoholic. No, really, I'm a real alcoholic. Like this is. I'm not a past tense alcoholic. I'm a present day alcoholic, and it was very obvious to me last night. And I was like, I'm glad I know that. And this is my point. I'm glad I know that. That I don't think, I'm better, that's all done. No, it's still me, which means I still need to put in the work in order to keep myself safe. And that was driven home. I really felt that way last night. I'm like, and it's always good to be able to come here and have this podcast and go to my meetings and do all the other things I do in order to keep that alcoholic mind at bay.
I had a eureka moment when you're just talking here, and I'm guilty of this. When we do this comparison, and I've made mistakes, and I'm not like so-and-so, that discounts that each of us, because you said you call people based on your situation, Each one of us in recovery has a special talent. We are a subject matter expert on something, but we don't always see that.
Right.
So if I might say, gosh, I'm so jealous that Dave has such a great relationship with his higher power. I must be doing something wrong. It dismisses, well, there might be something Dave would call me for that I'm good at. And you always look at the things that you feel like you're missing. I'm comparing because this person has this many sponsees, goes to this amount of meetings, and is doing great here, missing the point of I might be a really good listener and empathizer, that somebody else may not be as good at that, and they may want to utilize me for that. That's a talent. I might be somebody who is really good at doing some service stuff that other people don't want to do.
Yeah.
So you got to look inside when you're saying I should be better at this. It's also worth saying, well, what do I bring that is a unique strength that I discount because that's just not how the human mind works? Eureka moment. All right, we want to hear from you. How do you feel about learning from your mistakes? How hard are you on it? Do you consider that? And do you want this to work faster? Matt at SoberFriendsPod.com. We're on all the socials. You can reach us there. Steve, thanks for another great show.
Thanks, Matt.
And we'll see everybody next week. Bye, everybody.